Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. I'm Tim Stein, and I am joined today with my colleagues and friends Dan Drake, Jeannie Vitoni, and Wendy Conquest. We have a question from one of our listeners that we were talking offline, and it just became a whole conversation. So we decided we should record this and share it with you. The question is. Um, my spouse has had sex with lots of people other than me. I would ask to be sexual with them, and he always had reasons for not being sexual with me. Later, I would learn he was waiting for me to go to sleep so he could watch porn, sex with other people, and leave in the middle of the night to have unprotected sex with strangers. I'm really trying to have empathy. I want to forgive and not become some bitter old lady, but I'm really pissed. He had a sex life the whole time, and he denied me of having one. Can you share what could be at the heart of this avoidance? And what is a spouse supposed to do with a partner who seems to want to play married instead of actually be married?
I hear her pain. I just want to acknowledge that before we get into our discussion here. I hear her grief and her loss and sadness and bewilderment. I really hear the heart of this person. And
Yeah.
so I want to acknowledge that. And I'm so thankful that she put the question or put that into the mailbag so that we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
there's
and I
not any
hear
other
it.
paid partner that is saying, hey, where did the sex energy, where did sex go in our relationship? And then when they learn, oh, my partner's actually been sexual somewhere else with somebody else's out
Yeah.
of me, and I've been sexless in this marriage.
Yeah.
Especially when I've seen situations where the betrayed partner in this situation, they don't like it, they don't want it, but they may come to terms, okay, I guess that phase of our relationship is over, and then it's an extra double betrayal when they find out not only was that not over, it was just any of the intimacy was taken elsewhere besides with the partner. So yeah, I can, like you said, I can completely appreciate how just incredibly painful and traumatizing that would be.
Well, and I hear also confusion from her because it's very confusing. It's like, if a person is available sexually, available for emotional intimacy and really trying hard to engage, and then they're not being met, and then they find out that they're actually engaging with other people, not in a deep emotional way, but at least some sort of engagement with others. How baffling. Like
So,
it's just so confusing.
so thoughts on what's going on? Because I'm assuming that we're all in agreement this is more than just a malicious choice on the addict's part. What do you guys, when you have these type of situations showing up in your office, what do you typically find at its core?
Oh, are we talking towards the betrayed or are we talking towards the betrayer?
Let's
When
talk
Yeah,
betrayer
I think
first.
so. I think it's
betrayer.
more of the question.
Okay. Okay.
We were talking a little bit offline, and I'm just going to throw this term out there. It was coined by Doug, but intimacy anorexia. And I know Jeannie, we talked about the term, and we can talk more about that too. But to me, I wonder about that. If some version of whatever that term, which we can describe, is going on here, where the way I would see it is, which is really confusing. I want to say, especially if we have a kind of traditional couple, heterosexual male addict with a female partner. Traditionally men are supposed to want to have sex and are wanting sex with their partner, and then that's not happening, and they're going outside. It's just really confusing. But if someone does have that pattern, which I do see, I mean, we see it a decent amount, and at least I do it in my practice. I don't know if you guys do, but to me, it's the pattern of withholding of intimacy from the relationship. That's the way I see it. So it's oftentimes, oftentimes the men I see, they'll be very charming at the beginning. They're really good. They're really good at the first part of a relationship, maybe even through courtship. And then there's something when the commitment happens, whether that's the wedding day, whether that's they get home from the honeymoon or some sort of commitment. Whether there's something, whether we made a commitment, things shift. It just shifts. And now the person starts to push the partner away. I see that play out a lot. Do you guys see that, or is that just
I do, yeah. And what I find is, it does go back to things happening in childhood, but what I find with the people that I work with is that there's a lack of communicate or not being able to communicate wants and needs. And so having wants and needs, but being stuck in how to communicate that, not being schooled in that, not being practiced in that, growing angry and resentful that their needs and wants aren't being met, and then acting out, going to others for some sort of contact or connection. And I don't know, is it? I guess I get curious. Is that eroticized rage that's happening as well? We could say, that's avoidant. They're being avoidant, but they're also being active in the avoidance. Do you know
are
what I
they
mean?
both, but are they mutually exclusive? I guess that's to me, like, when I see that playing out a lot of times, and for me, I'll just way overly simplify that. If we think polyvagal theory, where we have two main systems of operating in the world, we have our system that identifies threat cues and danger around us, as well as the system for social engagement. If those are two systems involved, a lot of times the men I work with, those two things got messed up earlier on for whatever reason, with trauma or violation from somebody. So maybe primary caregiver overly violated them or overly meshed with them. So there's this, in some ways, social engagement or intimacy becomes threatening for that person. So they want it, they actually crave it, but then they push it away at the same time because it's too invasive. So I think I think that eroticized rage would make sense, because I push it away because I don't want to be, and it's not based on the partner, it's based on early childhood stuff. Like there's a perpetrator somewhere, that I didn't know how to say no to, or couldn't. I wasn't able to, and now I'm taking it out on my wife, on my partner.
I don't see it as
That's
eroticized. I'm like, where? What? I have too many questions. I don't see this as eroticized anger. I see this as fear. I see this as I don't two things. I see the all or nones is where it comes out for me. I have fear. I don't know how to connect with others, therefore I don't, and I avoid. Or in my growing up years, perhaps somebody was so boundaryless with me, could be emotionally, could be sexually, but enmeshment, they were so much in myself, I didn't have a sense of self. Therefore, I'm scared that I'm going to be completely overwhelmed. So therefore, I avoid.
But I think with that, if that level of enmeshment happens, I almost always find eroticized rage someone that couldn't say no, no, and then because they couldn't say no, that fuels resentment. They don't know how to speak up or advocate for themselves. That resentment turns into entitlement pretty
I,
quickly.
I,
Okay,
I,
well, hold on.
yeah.
Tim.
I'm going to say not to disagree with, for the example, the enmeshed version that I've given here, not the one who doesn't know how to, the one that feels overwhelmed by. I'm not disagreeing with you about there being anger and therefore I have pushed people away. But I also see that it's anger towards, but it's not necessarily anger toward current relationship partner.
I
It's
think the partner becomes becomes the outgrowth of it. I don't disagree. They're not the real target. But ask
I
any partner in that situation, they're going to feel it. They feel it's going to feel like this big fu to me.
I think I agree that there is a feeling of F you to me, but that's not where I'm going. I'm going to, there is a ton of fear of how do I share myself with you and not be overwhelmed by you? How do I share myself with you and not get lost? So therefore, I'm not going to, because being in a real relationship, which involves emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, and we're focusing on emotion and sex right now, is so scary, overwhelming to me that I'm going to go be with others. And again, not approving, not saying it's okay, but I'm going to go be transactional and fantasy based with others because it's not real. I don't fear it as much. So I'm saying I think there's a lot of fear in there. Not that betrayed partners don't feel the FU on it. Absolutely. Per our,
What fuels them to go from? What fuels them to go act out then?
because it is easier to be
Because I'm want to be sexual, and I think it's something more than that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I don't think that they actually want to be sexual, especially with hundreds of people.
Well, I think no,
I don't
sometimes
think it's about sex at all.
I think sometimes it is because I think they're using sex to affirm themselves. So I would say that at times I'm getting them, this is back to our conquestors. I'm getting them to want to be with me emotionally, physically, sexually, and that fills me. And I don't have to go back into the real relationship and be vulnerable because in the fantasy base, there is no vulnerability. I can pretend and show up however I want. So I really think there's a lot of fear base.
I don't disagree. I think it's fear. I agree. I actually agree. It's fear. That's at
Right.
the core of it. I think why I turn from my intimate partner to someone not my intimate partner. What makes me do that? To me, move from avoidance. Usually, at least what I've heard from the men I've worked with,
Mhm.
there's justification, there's entitlement, there's stuff. They'll sabotage things. They'll like promise an intimate connection, and then something happens. They'll they're like, oh, tonight this is date night. We're sexual tonight, honey. Believe me. And then lo and behold, they start arguing, and there's a sabotage that always seems to happen, and it
I've
never
seen
ends up
both.
happening.
I've
You
seen
do?
both. I've seen absolutely. I
And
can,
again, I'm just going down that road. Maybe it's a whole different road with this particular question.
yeah.
That's in my when I've read it, that's what I've seen. So maybe there's other things going on for sure.
Because I have worked with both different sets of addicts and partners in those situations. One, scared, don't know how to, don't know what to do. So I'm going to go over here and get myself affirmed versus and separate. I have a lot of anger and so I'm going to go towards someone else or something else sort of against you to push away from you. So I absolutely have seen both.
Tim, you want to weigh in?
He's enjoying the fun.
He is. He's not usually so quiet.
There's not much space to hop in.
Yeah, he's tried.
Oh,
He's
nice.
tried. Watch. He's
I
tried.
mean, what's coming up for me is how this is such a complex issue. I mean, and we're talking about multiple different ways that this pattern shows up. And so I think sometimes it is anger. Sometimes I think it's fear that's mixed in there. Sometimes I think it's pain and trauma. I think the thing that we're all highlighting, though, is, and I want to highlight something actually, which is the way that, especially Jeannie, you were talking about it. I find that most of the time it's not a conscious choice. And so all
Great.
these things are
Great.
like, I'm getting my affirmation out there and I don't
Agree.
want to do it here. All that is usually unconscious. But what I think we're talking about is that almost universally, when this pattern shows up, there's something traumatic in childhood that has set in motion a pattern that intimate relationships are not safe and are not to be trusted. And that sort of that really conflicts with sort of our wiring, which is, we're human beings, we're kind of wired to connect. And so when we have had an experience that says this connection that you want so desperately is not safe, it creates all this kind of chaos. And so I've seen the pattern frequently with people who are very charming and wonderful on the surface and are great at the beginning of relationships until the relationship, and Dan, when you were saying like there's a milestone like marriage or something, sometimes it's that, but I often see it as when the relationship gets to the point where it's starting to become more meaningfully intimate. And as it becomes more meaningfully intimate, the safety of leaning in with sex or the safety of being known sort of drops away because there's too much pressure there. And so they
Too much at stake.
stay there with the superficial good stuff, and then they start to look and get their connection needs in a place that feels safe, which is a place where there really isn't a deep emotional connection.
I also see, yeah, Tim, I agree. I also see that when the first baby's born, so
Mm.
that piece of I had a primary caregiver and was betrayed in that relationship early on. It could be anywhere from birth on. And so there's this, oops, a close relationship isn't safe. I need to rely on myself. I really can't trust others that much. And then they connect with somebody as best they could. They feel kind of the yumminess of what a relationship could be. And then, at some point, but I see it a lot when that first baby comes. And if we're talking male, female, and then the woman is turning towards the child
Yeah,
as she
appropriately.
needs to,
as it, yeah.
appropriately. And then the guy's like, almost like, oh my gosh, here it is again. Like they're not there for me. And I've had guys say, I felt it, but I thought this is ridiculous, right? This is what a mother's supposed to do. This is natural, but something way deep inside switched off or switched on, and that's when my acting out either escalated or even started.
I think in wrapping this up, we can say that in this mailbag one, there is a lot of complexity here. There's a lot of individual work, couples work, exploration to be done and figured out. Because both we're talking about the addict needs and unconscious and where does it come from, and then also the betrayed partner's grief and loss of a loss of sexual years. And this is one of those examples that, it's a perfect example of why betrayal with sex addiction is so different than being in a partnership with an alcoholic or
Yeah.
drug user or something, because this is the sexual impact on another person by someone else's addiction, So this is a very complex one. And so I hope both those wonderful people are doing the work and have good people to help them.
And let me say one more thing. And I already hear in the comments section, people typing in there, did that guy really say? And, and so let me just say that I really think it's also beautiful that she's trying to figure out how to have empathy here, how to understand here. Because being angry and pissed off and how could he and all just leave, that's easy. But the be able to say, we sometimes refer to this as deconstructing the abuser. I'm not saying that what they did is okay, and I'm not saying that I don't have a right to be angry, but I'm trying to understand what happened in their life that got them to the point where they acted in this way that hurt me so badly. And so I need to let myself heal, but I'm trying to understand everything that led up to this situation that hurt me so deeply and sort of this partner leaning in and trying to have empathy, which does not mean that what she went through was okay. I actually think that's a really healthy healing process on her side.
Well,
And I also just want to add one last thing that like I just where we started, I can see how much more incredibly painful that is. So trying to understand it, yes, that's super healthy and helpful, but there's also this like, you mentioned earlier, Tim, that the drive we have to connect and how human that is and innate.
Yeah.
And this poor betrayed partner has been trying to connect and not getting that, and how devastating that is
mhm.
to have that experience. I just want to re-emphasize that as we
And
close.
my thought is that there needs to be the right intervention for him. And so recently I found out that SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, has a subsection for sexual
Right.
anorexia.
Right.
And so I've recently had some people go to that meeting, which is very different than the Sex Addicts Anonymous meeting. So just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, so caveat. I love what you just said, Wendy. Thank you for sharing the subset and the information. You use the terms sex anorexia, sexual
Sexual
anorexia.
anorexia.
Yeah, which is a term we haven't yet really gone off and described and such. And so I want to, like, that's part of what got us going earlier, is being careful with that term. What does that term mean? What does that term, because it means different things to different people. And so as listeners, if you heard that term and it caught your ears, I just want to caution some exploration of what that means for you and what that means for your person and what that means for the 12-step organization.
Well, and it's something that people can just check out, right? Like with any 12-step meeting, it's like, you go to a meeting, you hear what other people are saying. You either say, "Oh my gosh, I totally relate to what other people are saying. This is my meeting, this is my group," or you go, "Man, no, I gotta, kind of keep looking."
And pay attention to future episodes because I'm betting we're going to have one on sexual anorexia in the near future.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody, thank you for joining us. And
Thanks for
listening to
the
this
writer.
conversation. Thank you to the person who wrote into us. What a vulnerable and meaningful email. And if you are listening to us, if you could like us and comment and share us with other people out there, that helps us get our message out there to who's out there. And if you have a question you want to send our way, you can do that by sending an email to conversations.sar@gmail.com. As always, all my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. This was so much fun.
Bye, guys.
Everyone.